let's talk about Afflatus by Strezov sampling. So a while ago, I think a couple months ago, I reached out to George and said, hey, would you consider giving me a bundle price for the Jade Orchestra and the Balkan Orchestra? And I wasn't gonna ask for free stuff because I know how much work goes into these products, so I don't want to ask anyone for free stuff. But then I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I got a really, really sweet message from him saying, hey, we're fans of your channel over here. We watch it all the time. And here's a ton of free stuff. Have fun. So I'm just now kind of starting to get around to doing all these reviews. And so I'm starting with Afflatus because a lot of people have been asking that on my strings video. They were like, what about this library? And I wasn't going to buy it just to do a review. But so now that I have it, I figured, all right, why not do that? I also have a lot of the choir libraries. I'm going to do reviews on those, and also the Jade library and the Balkan library. So all of this is coming, hopefully before Black Friday. It's just a lot to get through. And I'm just coming out of a bunch of movies, so I hope I now have time to do that. So let's get into the overall. Prepare to wait a long time for this to download because the library is over 100 gigabytes large, so it takes a moment. Plus, you need double the hard drive space in order to download it and then install it because it's all zip and RAR files that need to be unpacked. So prepare for that. The price is roughly 800 euros, which currently is around 940 US dollars. So it's definitely up there with like the VSL libraries. I'd say Orchestral Tools is a little cheaper, and Cine Samples and like Cinematic Studio series are a lot more affordable than that. It loads into the free Contact player, so that's nice. You don't need any like paid version of Contact to play this. In general, I would say this is not a beginner library. I mean, the price already suggests that it's definitely a pro library, but also it's very confusing. Like the patch naming is not very obvious, and it's a lot of patches, first of all, and it's just not entirely clear what all of this is doing. But I'll get into that later. It's very demanding on RAM, on hard drive space. I actually had to upgrade my RAM for this and also for the VSL libraries I got. And had to get more hard drive space because it's just such a large library and it's just very demanding on your system. If you're a student or a beginner and you have like a laptop that you're working off of, I think you're gonna run into problems, probably. The concept behind the library is to capture more of a performance and to really go through signature articulations of different composers from film and TV, but also from the classical world, and to capture that. As part of that, they did leave in a bunch of flaws, which, you know, I'm not necessarily a fan of. They didn't overdo it though in most patches, so I think it's very usable the way they did it, but be aware of that. It does lead to a little bit of a mixed bag. Like some patches are just absolutely gorgeous and unlike anything I have, and they're definitely in my template. And then other patches are like almost unusable, I think. So yeah, that's kind of what you get with that approach, I guess. The overall sound of the library is very special, I think. It's very silky, very Russian romanticism, I would say. And I think that is the thing that I love the most about this library, because the other libraries do not sound like this. My favorite patches are definitely the Amour patches. They're like very expressive. It's very hard to describe. It's very romantic. I've already used them a lot, because I don't think I have patches that expressive in any other library. I did have to do some heavy EQing with this library. I can show you on screen what I did. I might keep refining that further, but overall it felt like there wasn't enough low end on the library, there wasn't enough warmth, and there was a lot in the high mids that didn't really need to be there. So I had to do some extra EQing there. And this library really swallows up reverb for some reason. I put the same amount of reverb on it that I put on my other libraries, and I generally use dry libraries. So, and this one is very, very dry. If you hate that, this might not be for you. But I prefer dry libraries like this one, where I can dial in the reverb however I want it. And it's much easier to blend with other libraries too, I think. But this one is, I don't know why, but I could use like twice the amount of reverb on this. So I definitely am going to have to adjust my Vienna Ensemble Pro template for this and put all these effects into just these patches onto their outputs and not into my general template, just to make it sound like the other libraries, or to make it sound more balanced when it goes through my other signal chain. The interface is very simple and self-explanatory. I like that. You know me, I don't like super complicated interfaces that you have to mess with all the time. It seems initially this library was released as like single patches, split patches, how I like it. And then they went in and made articulation patches by request of the client, the customers. I think the single patches work much better though than the articulation patches, because the articulation patches are very unbalanced, I think, because it just wasn't conceptualized that way. I mean, they can fix that in an update, of course, and there have been many updates to this library already, so it's not, it's not like they threw this out on the market and then didn't go back into it to fix it, so they are fixing it frequently and putting in new content as well. But yeah, the thing with this is that it's just the pre-delays and volume balance and velocity balance between the articulations is just too all over the place for me to really use the articulation patches. So I don't think they're that useful. Even between the longs and shorts themselves, it doesn't quite work. But it doesn't bother me too much because I like using split patches anyway, so. The legatos in general are fine. They're a bit bumpy here and there, especially in fast passages, but not to the point where they're unusable. It's just audible sometimes that, that crossfade into the legato and out of the legato. You can just hear those little volume bumps sometimes. There are some minor bugs, but not a lot. The one thing that I found was that, for example, in the cello shorts, the marcato jumps to the left randomly instead of staying on the right where the celli usually are. Stuff like that, but it's not, there's not a lot of that. I did end up deleting the minimalism patches that they have because they were just too all over the place for me. But if you like that stuff, go for it. In general, it seems they have, full lush patches, and then they have chamber size patches, and then they have the first chair patches. And some patches come with different legatos than others, which I find very confusing. I literally had to read the manual for this library just to understand what's what and what's in what patch and why it's not very streamlined. Not all of the patches work the same way. Only the first chairs have portamento, which actually works very nicely. It sounds gorgeous. But had I not read the manual, I probably wouldn't have noticed. It does work very beautifully. If you have a line and you bring out the first chair portamento, it actually sounds better and more realistic than if the whole section had recorded portamento, I think. It definitely works. But yeah, you have to be aware of all this stuff. The first chair patches sometimes have slight mistakes in them. Like sometimes you can hear a player hit 2 strings accidentally or something like that. Which, I mean, it can't really be helped because players will eventually make mistakes. But yeah, I kind of wish that wasn't there. There are also so-called mysterious legato patches, which a lot of people are going to be very happy about. It's those patches have round-robin legatos, which is incredibly hard to do and incredibly time-consuming. But they have it for those passages when you have, alternating notes that go back and forth. I understand why you would want that, because I have it in some other libraries where it does get stale when you do that. That's why I like to layer libraries on top of each other so you don't have that problem. But if you're just using one library and you do that back and forth, then you're very quickly going to hear that it's the same samples being triggered. So with the mysterious patches, you don't have that because they have round-robin legatos. And they also adjust the legato speed based on how fast or slow you're playing or what passages you're playing. So that's really helpful. And then also something you don't find in every library is they have harmonics legatos, in case you're dying to have that. I mean, it's nice. I don't usually write extensive harmonics legato passages, but look, it's nice to have. It's nice that they did that. One thing that I love that they have is they have the impressionist patches, and so you can play a note in those patches, and then you add a second note held down at the same time, and it'll start trilling between those notes. And they did not just have half-step, whole-step trills, they went up to an octave. So you don't have that in a lot of libraries, where they actually recorded trills beyond a major second or a fifth. So that's really nice and not something I have, I don't think. The chamber sound they have is really good and clean. I almost like the chamber sound more than the lush sound, but it's a question of taste. And then they also have a Sordino button in the graphic interface. It's not actually recorded Sordino though, be aware of that. And it's not really necessary to record Sordinos either. It's a filter that gets applied when you enable that button in the back end. You can see it when you click on the wrench. You can see the filter, the EQ being applied. You can also do that with any other library, by the way. I think we even put it in the Cinestrings manual, how to achieve a Sordino sound with EQing. You can do that in the DAW, you can do that in Contact, however you like. But yeah, it's a really nice trick. It's really nice of them to do that and to just put a button in the interface that you can just enable to have a Sordino sound. In the full string patches that they also have, it's not all just sections, they also have full ensemble patches. You can use the sustain pedal to like DVC, and I think they also have like smart legatos going on and stuff. I don't use a lot of ensemble patches, so it's not that cool for me, but if you use a lot of ensemble patches, there you go. But so the sustain pedal will basically determine whether a line is played, like a polyphonic line is played by the entire section, or if a line is only played, like if it DVCs it up between the sections. And that's kind of cool. In other patches, the sustain pedal functions as a normal sustain pedal, which is a bit confusing, but okay. This library has so much stuff in it. It has rebows for like repeated notes, and it has round-robin reset controls. It has niente controls. It has a velocity dynamic influencer, with which you can widen the dynamic range of the velocity. There's also all kinds of like special articulations, effect articulations. There's combo patches with choir and other random instruments. It's a lot. You have all these patches with different legato types and vibrato types, and to me, When I first looked at it, I just thought this is very, very bloated and confusing. It has over 200 patches, and I feel like we could do with less stuff. I would consider myself to be very experienced in this field, and I had to watch all of their walkthrough videos. I had to play around with this library probably for 2 whole days, and I had to read the entire manual just to understand what the hell is going on here. Like I said, it's a lot of functionalities, it's a lot of patches. They don't all work the same way. It's not super streamlined. So it's also not all named in a way that makes it super obvious what's what. So it requires a bit of work. Like, there's a learning curve with this library. It also has a lot of hidden functionalities that you really only know about if you actually read the manual. But then what I also find is I forget about them. Like, I read the thing and then later on I forget, and then I stumble upon that functionality again and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember reading about that in the manual. It's because there's just so much going on that you even forget what the library can do, pretty much. It's just too many things to keep in mind, I think. It does have a beautiful manual though. The German in me appreciates that. Anyway, my conclusion is I personally love about half of this library. Half of this library is my template now. The other half, I'm kind of, maybe I'll look at it again later, but it's, it doesn't quite work the way I would like it to work, or it's too much. It's too much to use for me. I mean, it has all the articulations one can ask for and much more. But just be aware that I think it needs a bit of work before you can use it. So just make some time between purchase and actually using it to really get to know this product, because it does need a bit of trying out and figuring this out. And if you're a beginner, I don't know if this is for you. I mean, price-wise, it's probably not a beginner library, I would say, but also how demanding it is, but also how confusing it is. I think if this were my first library, I'd be so confused. I would have such a hard time figuring this out. But if you already have a ton of string libraries and you're looking for something different, stuff that you don't already have, or stuff that is usually missing in other libraries because it's just too much work, it costs too much recording time, and it's too complicated to program, they've probably done it, so you'll probably find it in this library. If you're one of those people that really wants all of those articulations and round-robin legatos and all the stuff that you're asking for on various forums that other developers aren't doing, you can find it here. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed my demo for this product. I hope you got something out of this.